This video is made possible by donations to the United States Lighthouse Society from people like you. So again, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for attending another one of our live Zoom, live virtual events. Great to have you here as always. For anybody who doesn't know, I think a lot of you know me, but I'm Jeremy D'Entremont. I'm the historian for the U.S. Lighthouse Society, host of the Society's podcast, Lighthearted. And today I'm also going to be presenting basically this program we're doing today, which is of course going to be a preview of our New Hampshire and Maine tour we have coming up October 6th to 12th. As always, this event, the recording of this event will be posted probably by sometime tomorrow on the U.S. Lighthouse Society YouTube channel. If you have not looked at the YouTube channel, you need to do it. Near the end of the presentation today, I'm actually going to show you the website and show you a couple of things. There are social media links down at the bottom of the front page of the U.S. Lighthouse Society website. But if you just get on YouTube and do a search for U.S. Lighthouse Society or USLHS, you'll find it very easily. And this will be posted on the YouTube channel by sometime tomorrow. And also, when you get on the YouTube channel, please subscribe to it because it actually helps us. The more subscribers we have, there's ways of sort of monetizing it and making more money for the society and everything. So please like the YouTube channel for us. We'd appreciate that. So at this point, I'm going to get to the presentation in a couple of minutes, but I want to introduce somebody very special today who is going to be the co-leader of this upcoming tour, the Maine and New Hampshire tour. And is also just happens to be my wife's sister's daughter, my niece. And let's say hello to Tina Hans. How are you, Tina?
Hi everybody. I'm excited to be here and help Jeremy with this tour and co-lead the tour. I just wanted to spend just a really brief minute to just give a little bit information on myself, just so that help everybody become comfortable with who I am and how I'll be helping with co-leading the tour. So I'm retired, other than being a part-time consultant, but in my career I was a meeting planner, event planner. So I as part of my career, and so I have a lot of experience dealing with travel, hotels, restaurants, special dietary needs, anything that anybody would need along the time of the tour. So for this tour, I'm managing the hotels, the restaurants, the coach transportation, and Jeremy obviously is the expert and historian on lighthouses that's managing that key piece of the tour. So thanks for welcoming me, and I look forward to meeting you all.
Thank you, Tina. So you'll be in good hands with Tina as the tour leader. I know that. We're very happy to welcome her into the U.S. Lighthouse Society family. And Tina, if you weren't already a lighthouse nut, you will be. It's required. We'll turn you into one.
I have some lighthouses behind me too.
Yes. I was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, my parents had a home at the Cape well, I started going to the Cape and Maine coast and Connecticut shorelines basically my whole life. So while I don't know the lighthouses the way you do, I do have a lot of interest in a lot of the organizations related to saving lighthouses, keeping them out there. I do a lot of other volunteer work out in the Cape in the summer with beach cleanups and things like that. So it's close to being near and dear to my heart. So I'm excited to get into it with you.
Yeah. And that's of course Brant Point Lighthouse right behind you on Nantucket, the painting behind you.
Yeah.
And Charlotte and I have a lot of nice memories of your mom and dad's place in Truro, North Truro, and Cape Cod.
Mhm.
Beautiful place, and so many nice memories there. And seeing before they moved Highland Light, you could actually see the flash of the lighthouse through the skylights of the house, which is something
Yeah,
I always
that
liked.
was nice. Yeah.
Really was, yeah. So let me just mention that there's a lot of other tours coming up this year for the U.S. Lighthouse Society. This year, I believe there are 5 domestic tours and 3 international ones, and I think I'll say a little bit more about that near the end of the presentation. And I know we also have Margie Rowland, I see in the audience, who's one of the people in charge of all these tours. So maybe I can get Margie to say a little bit towards the end, but anyway, so there's some really exciting tours coming up, but the main focus for today is the Maine and New Hampshire tour, which starts on October 6th to 12th. The presentation I'm about to give is approximately 40 minutes long, just so you can plan accordingly. Might be a little bit shorter, but besides going over the itinerary, I just, for the fun of it, have thrown in a few what I think are interesting historical tidbits. Not a lot for any particular lighthouse, but just here and there, some fun stories and things. So there'll be a little bit of history mixed in here, but not a tremendous amount. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and you should all be seeing my screen at this point. Tina, can you confirm you're seeing my screen?
I see your screen. I can't see the screen that I can admit more people anymore, though. Hold on, let me go back. Maybe I can.
Um, yeah, you should be able
Okay.
to.
Yep, I
Are you
got it.
seeing it now? Okay,
Yeah, I
great.
do. Thank you.
Excellent. Yeah. So here, of course, is Portland Headlight, which is one of the stars of the tour, and by my calculations, probably the most visited lighthouse in the world, with something like 1.2 million people a year. But I'll talk more about that in a few minutes. So here is a map of the tour, more or less. I wouldn't navigate by this or anything, but this shows you the basic route of the tour, starting down in the Portsmouth, New Hampshire area and going up to Midcoast, Maine, to the Rockland and Camden area, and of course, many stops in between. So 436 miles is approximate, but gives you an idea the number of miles we'll be covering. 4 cruises in the course of the tour. Actually, that's not including one really short one on one of the days to an island, and 30 lighthouses, and that doesn't count a couple we'll see in the distance. So more accurately, that might be more like 32. And 8 museums, and that's counting some that are at the lighthouses and the keepers' houses, but it's including a few kind of standalone museums as well. So are going to be our home base, uh, I believe, for the first 3 nights of the tour. Embassy Suites by Hilton in Portland. That's where we'll have our welcome dinner there. Tina, anything you want to add about the lighthouse? I mean, not the lighthouse, but the hotel.
Oh, yeah. So we selected this hotel because of the location. It has plenty of parking, not only for people that drive in and want to leave their car for the whole duration of our tour, but also for the coach. And then also they have a nice facility to have a welcome reception and the farewell dinner here. So it's not as critical of travel times for people when they do arrive. And they also do have a free shuttle to downtown Portland if you do arrive early and you want to go see some of the local sites prior to meeting us for the dinner. And so that's all I have to say about that. But Jeremy, there are a few people chatting in that saying their screen is fuzzy. Mine is clear, so I'm not sure if if that's something that you can check on or not.
It looks fine to me. A few people are saying that, or is it one person
Yeah,
saying?
there's been like 3 or 4 people that have chatted that it's fuzzy.
Really?
Yeah.
I'll have to come out of screen share in order to. Let me try coming out of screen share and going back into it again. It looks fine to me, but I wonder if it's
Yeah. So some people are saying it's clear and some saying it's fuzzy.
-2. Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Um, let me go
Mine is
back.
clear.
Yeah, let me go back into share screen again and see if
All
it's
right.
any.
Someone just said theirs cleared up. So maybe doing that will take care of it.
Yeah. Uh,
Now
let me.
mine is fuzzy.
Yours is fuzzy?
Yeah, it wasn't before. So
Really?
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Does anybody can other people indicate
It
whether the
cleared
screen?
up, so maybe it's just gonna take a second to clear up because it started fuzzy and now it's clear.
Yeah, I've never heard of that happening like that before. It might have to do with the internet connection somewhere.
Okay,
I
all
think
right, well,
mine.
they're all saying it's clear now, so
Okay, good.
just
Well,
keep moving. Okay,
let's keep moving and pretend that didn't happen, and hope it
okay.
doesn't happen again. So I was also going to mention that a lot of people will probably be flying into the Portland Jetport, and this is very close to that airport uh, near Portland, so it makes it really handy too. So, uh, and our first stop the next morning is we're going to be going south about an hour down to Rye, New Hampshire, which is right near Portsmouth. And by the way, you see on the map here, the border between New Hampshire and Maine is right here, the Piscataqua River. So we'll be going a little bit below that, and we'll be getting on board the motor vessel Granite State, run by Granite State Whale Watch. My friend Pete Reynolds is a longtime owner and captain, and he'll be taking us out for this approximately 4-hour cruise. And here is a map of the cruise of the lighthouses we'll be seeing. Here's Granite State Whale Watch. We'll be going out to the Isles of Shoals, White Island Lighthouse, up to Boone Island Lighthouse, very dramatic place about 8 miles offshore, up to the famous Nubble Light here in York, back down to Whaleback Lighthouse, into Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse, and back to Rye. So here are the 5 lighthouses we'll see on that tour. And White Island is the southernmost of the Isles of Shoals, which are a really interesting island group. And we'll spend some time kind of meandering through the islands while we're out there. And there's a lot of great history and legends. There's pirate stories and ghost stories, etc. And I'll tell some of those. So I'll be narrating this cruise, and I've actually narrated the same cruise a number of times, and these are like family to me, these lighthouses. Let's see, a message just came up on my screen. Just needed to get rid of that. Anyway, and one of the nice things too is that on this cruise you get a water view of the Nubble Light. I'm sure some of you in the audience have been to see Nubble Light before. Extremely popular lighthouse. It's on the lower left here, but it's a little rare to get the chance to see it from the other side. And it's got a very rugged appearance from the ocean, as you can see there. So here's Portsmouth Harbor Lights. So after the cruise, we're going to go over to Newcastle, which is right next to Rye, and Newcastle is it's an island basically connected by a couple of bridges to the mainland. And Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouse is on Coast Guard Station, Portsmouth Harbor. So we're going to be driving onto a Coast Guard station with obviously the permission of the Coast Guard. Again, the border between Maine and New Hampshire is in the middle of the Piscataqua River here, so it's just where that schooner is. That's about on the border, and the distance that land is Kittery, Maine, the southernmost town on the Maine coast. But there's something really important I have to tell you about Portsmouth Harbor Light. Hopefully, we're going to get into it. That is not definite at this point because first of all, in December 2022, the walkway, our footbridge leading out to the lighthouse, which is over 80 feet long, you can see people on it in this picture, that was washed away in a storm just before Christmas 2022. The Coast Guard owns this property, and they were going to rebuild that, but that hasn't happened yet. Whoops, before I get to pictures of that, let me just throw in a little history there. So hold that thought. I'll get back to the storm damage in a moment. I just wanted to show you Joshua Card on the left, who was the longest serving keeper of Portsmouth Harbor Light. He was there 1874 to 1909 until he was 86 years old, oldest keeper in the country at the time. He's wearing that old lighthouse service uniform in that picture. And you see the fog bell on the side of the tower. He would have to wind up a mechanism every couple of hours in times of fog to sound that bell. And one of the stories about Joshua Card is that that lighthouse service uniform, can't really see it too well in this picture, but it would typically have the letter K on the lapels. And if he was showing people around, and if they asked him, oh, what does that K stand for? He'd always tell them, why, Captain, of course. So we think he knew how to spell, but we think he liked being called Captain. So he was Captain Card with a K, we like to call him. And in the middle there, that's Elson Small, who was the last keeper of Portsmouth Harbor Light, 1946 to 48, with his wife Connie there. They were at lighthouses almost 30 years in all, and all on the Maine coast on islands before they came to Portsmouth Harbor Light. I was lucky enough to know Connie in her last years. She lived to be 103. She passed away in 2005 at 103. And when she was 80 years old, she wrote the book you see there, The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife. And our local group here, Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses, actually co-published this new edition. So I recommend it very, very highly. If you want to read what it was like to live at lighthouses in the first half of the 20th century, you have to read The Lighthouse Keeper's Wife by Connie Small. And getting back to the storm damage. So this is after a storm that happened on January 13th, just what, 6 weeks ago, more or less. So there were actually two storms back to back in 3 days, the January 10th and 13th. The first one had an extreme high tide and flooded the Coast Guard station. The second one was even worse. And most, if not all, of this damage was done on that second storm. So you see the base of the lighthouse there on the left. That base dates back to the previous tower, 1804, pretty well smashed by that storm. That is Michelle Shaw there on the left, chair of the Friends of Portsmouth Harbor Lighthouses. I'm standing in the middle, and Bob Trapani, executive director of the American Lighthouse Foundation, who's with us today, is on the right there. Maybe later, Bob, near the end, we can say a little bit more about it. But the oil house, 1903 oil house on the right there, was pretty well smashed as well by the storm. And we're going to get repairs done soon, but I was just over there today and it's worse. You see the station was flooded again, rocks everywhere. There was a seawall. I think you can all see my cursor, and that's part of old Fort Constitution here. And that's what was the lighthouse keeper's wife. The Coast Guard has a wife. That was the lighthouse keeper's house, and the Coast Guard has some offices in there now. But in this area here, where this gap is, there was a seawall that was knocked down on those storms in January. So there's nothing there, so the water just pours up onto the station in these storms, and you can see the base is worse with every. We had an extreme high tide this morning. We're going to have another one tonight. But anyway, we're working with the Coast Guard and everybody involved, and repairs should be starting soon. So I hope next time I talk about this, it'll be good news. It will be. But anyway, when we get there in October, we may or may not be able to get right up to the lighthouse and get in it. But at the very least, we can go to a point about 100 feet away and point out some things from there. But I'm sure hoping everything's repaired by then. So this is our next stop that day, the Nubble Light in York, Maine, which is about a half hour north of Portsmouth. So we'll cross over into Maine. And Nubble Light is in York. It's off a point of land, part of Cape Nettic. And you can see in this picture that it's a little bit offshore. It's an island. Noble is an old name for a rocky island, a small rocky island. You go to a park there in York called Sawyer Park, and the lighthouse is a couple hundred feet away from you. As you see, this picture was taken at low tide, an extreme low tide. So it's theoretically possible to walk across to the island at low tide, but do not do it because the police will be there pretty quick. There are cameras pointed at it. There's no trespassing signs. And you're not supposed to walk over there, but you get a great view, as you can see here. And there's what they call a welcome center on the station. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. But again, a little bit of history here. In the early days, the lighthouse was built in 1879. And in its early days, the keepers decided to capitalize on the fact that it was a tourist attraction right from the start. So they would ferry people back and forth for a fee. And that old postcard from the early 1900s shows a keeper named William Brooks paddling some visitors or rowing some visitors to or from the lighthouse. And he and his family really cleaned up. He would put a sign on the mainland side that said Noble Ferry, 10 cents, round trip for 10 cents. He would take you out to the island, and if you wanted to pay his wife another 5 cents, you could get a tour of the lighthouse. And they say in summer they get as many as 300 to 400 people out on that island, and it's only maybe 2 acres at the most. So they cleaned up pretty good until he was told by the lighthouse service you can't do that anymore. They thought he was neglecting his job. and he really wasn't supposed to be making money off tourists. So he quit. He felt he wasn't making enough as a lighthouse keeper, I think. But anyway, so that was an interesting thing that went on in the early days. And then in the 1950s, one of the Coast Guard keepers put in a basket on a cable going out to the island, and that was to make it easier to move whether it was groceries or mail or whatever back and forth. It was not intended for people, but some of the residents, the keepers and families had other ideas about that. So this is a pretty famous picture taken in 1967. Coast Guard keeper named David Winchester and his wife thought rather than rowing their 7-year-old son Ricky across the channel every day a couple of times to go to school, they thought it would be easier and actually safer, they thought, to put him in the basket and send him to school. So there he is on his way to the second grade. And a photographer from the Boston Globe took this picture. The commander of the Coast Guard district saw it, was not pleased. That was the end of that. He had to board with people on the mainland, and he was the last school-age kid to live at the Noble. And he may have been the last person to ride in that basket. There's a smaller version of that basket there today. So there's some people at the park, and as I said, there's a welcome center on the lower left. That is my old friend Bill Thompson, who I've known, I think, for well over 30 years, who generally holds court on the front porch of the welcome center. He sells prints of his paintings. He's also written a lot of booklets about local history, but I can't guarantee he's going to be there this year. He is, I think, 90-ish at this point. Hoping he'll be there because he's a great guy. He's always entertaining. On the lower right, that is another friend, Matt Rosenberg. He is the caretaker for Noble Light. He's also a great photographer. He is a teacher during the school year and the caretaker in the summer. I'm hoping I might be able to arrange for him to speak to our group a little bit and answer questions, that kind of thing. If he's available, I'm sure he'll come over, but I'm not sure at this point. But on the upper right, that is Fox's restaurant. There's takeout windows for ice cream if anybody needs an ice cream, but don't spoil your dinner. But anyway, that is available there. Then our next stop will be going up in about another half hour to the north, near Portland, Cape Elizabeth, the so-called Two Lights. And you see on the upper left there why it's called the Two Lights. They're only a few hundred feet apart from each other. And you got in that picture, it's actually the east light on the left and the west light on the right. It looks like we're going to get into both of them, which is very unusual. These are not normally open to the public. It's private property. You see the east light on the picture on the upper right. The keeper's house there is privately owned, although the tower is maintained as preserved by the American Lighthouse Foundation. The lower picture is the west light, and both the tower and the house there are privately owned. It's no longer an active lighthouse. It was turned into a lookout tower on World War II. But in our 2021 tour here, the owners graciously opened it up for us. And it looks like that's going to happen again this year. So you'll have the rare opportunity to get into both of these beautiful lighthouses dating to 1874. And then we get to day 3. And first thing in the morning, that'll be a short drive from the hotel to Portland Headlight in Cape Elizabeth. Again, I would say the most visited and photographed lighthouse in the world, with well over 1 million people a year. And, when people ask me what my favorite lighthouse is, I always say I love a lot of them for different reasons. But if you're talking about sheer beauty, it's pretty hard to beat Portland Headlight. And this is kind of the classic angle that you see on postcards and calendars and everything all the time. I'll point that out to people when we get there. You just walk along the fence to get this view. But there is a museum in the keeper's house. And the picture on the right there is inside the museum. That is a beautiful old second order Fresnel lens that was in service for a while in the lighthouse. That's on display there. And there's exhibits on the history of the lighthouse and also on the adjacent fort, Fort Williams. The lighthouse is within Fort Williams Park. The picture on the top center is a very famous rock there. The poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow lived in Portland for much of his life, and he would they say he would walk from his home in Portland to the lighthouse and visit with the lighthouse keepers and their families. And that was his favorite rock to sit on and look out to sea. It's a little low. It doesn't seem real comfortable to me, but they say that was his favorite rock. And on the plaque there is part of his poem, The Lighthouse, one of his more popular poems. So that's a cool feature there. And in the lower center, that is the gift shop. It doesn't look like much of a building, but there's a lot in that little gift shop. So I'm sure a lot of you will want to check that out as well. And just one other thing you'll see at Portland Headlight is that rock in the lower picture that's painted with the words Annie C. McGuire shipwrecked here Christmas Eve 1886. And every once in a while they repaint those words. And there's the shipwreck on the left. That again, Christmas Eve 1886, the ship that was carrying freight from going from south to north crashed on the rocks during apparently kind of is a debate whether it was a rain or snowstorm. It really shouldn't have happened. Apparently, the crew wasn't paying close enough attention, and pretty unusual to see a shipwreck right next to a lighthouse like that. But the Strout family, and that is keeper Joshua Strout on the right, he was there more than 30 years. He and his son Joseph Strout and the rest of the family managed to get ladders out to the ship over the rocks, and everybody got off safely. But then they kind of ate the Strouts out of house and home over the next few days until they finally left. And this is a bonus lighthouse. This is not included in the 30 lighthouses on the tour. But when you're at Portland Headlight and you look out about a mile in the distance, I think it's actually less than a mile, but more like half a mile, is Ram Island Ledge Line. You'll get a really good view of it. This kind of classic wave-swept granite tower built in 1905, almost a twin of Graves Light in Boston Harbor, although that one's a little taller. And this lighthouse is now privately owned. And you see that old dilapidated pier out in front of the lighthouse. That was not too long ago, it was restored by the private owner, but those storms in January pretty well wrecked it again. In fact, I think it looks even worse than this picture now. So that's mostly gone now. But anyway, you'll get a view of this lighthouse. And then we go on to South Portland to Spring Point Ledge Light, which is kind of lighthouses you see that people often call a spark plug light, a caisson light. That cast iron caisson is sunk down into the bottom. And the upper part, the superstructure, is actually brick in this case. Most of these lighthouses are entirely cast iron. You can see some of the Casco Bay Islands in the distance. Casco Bay in that area is said to, they call it the Calendar Islands because people like to say there's 365 islands, one for each day of the year. That's definitely an exaggeration, but not by that much. There's probably well over 200 islands in the bay. On the right, you see an aerial picture there. That's Fort Preble near the base of the breakwater there. Southern Maine Community College is right nearby. And there was not a breakwater originally. When this lighthouse was built in 1897, this was an offshore lighthouse. The keepers would have to row back and forth. And that breakwater, that granite breakwater, was added in the early 1950s. So obviously you can walk out there now. This lighthouse will be open for us. And here's a couple of closer looks at the breakwater. It's not a long walk. It's only about 900 feet, but the stones, the granite stones, are a good distance apart in some cases. There's like gaps between them. So you have to really watch every step you take when you walk out there. So some of you who do the tour will want to walk out, some won't. But for those who do, the lighthouse will be opened and there's exhibits inside. It's cared for by the Spring Point Ledge Light Trust, a nonprofit. There's a view looking back from the top of the lighthouse, the breakwater. There's one of the rooms inside the lighthouse. They make it look like it did when there were keepers living there. And the most famous resident of Spring Point Ledge Light for quite a few years in the early 1900s was this guy, Gus Wilson, keeper. And he was famous because he carved decoys. And he is actually one of the most famous wooden decoy carvers in American history. You see some examples of his work there on the right. I'm not an expert, so I won't go into why his work is so special. They look very graceful to me. But there's this little exhibit about him there inside the lighthouse. His decoys, he sold them for 75 cents each when he was alive. He carved hundreds of them. But a couple of his pieces of work have gone for as much as about, I think, at least $200,000 at auction in recent years. So he would be pretty amazed if he was around today to see that. Then we move on down, just down the street from Spring Point Ledge Light. This is literally just several hundred feet away. Portland Breakwater Light, but people around there know it as Bug Light. I think because they think it's cute as a bug. It's obviously a very short lighthouse. It's the only lighthouse in the country that's based on an ancient Greek monument, the Koragic Monument of Lysicrides. I'm proud of myself. I got to remember that. It's Koragic, meaning choral, so it was a monument to singers from the, I believe it was the 4th century BC. And so it's a very interesting lighthouse, very unique. And that's one of the schooners based in Portland going by there. So this will be open for us. It's maintained by volunteers from the local Rotary Club. They take great care of it. Here's a little bit of history of it. For most of its history, there was no keeper's house there, but for some years, from the late 1800s into the early 1900s, there was a keeper's house, as you see on that postcard, attached to the lighthouse. So it was kind of straddling that breakwater. It overhung on both sides, and there were families living there. So you got Keeper William Holbrook on the right there, and those are 3 of his grandchildren who live there. The older of the boys there, Ray Holbrook, wrote his memoirs about living there. And he said he and his brother would play on the deck. That was their yard as kids. And he said their favorite game was to throw stuff in the water to see what floats. And he said that was fun until his brother threw his teddy bear in the water, and I guess it floated away. So he didn't want to play that game anymore. And there's another view of it from the water. And you see that interesting structure to the left of the lighthouse that is made to look like the bow of one of the Liberty ships that were built during World War II to carry freight and supplies and troops across the Atlantic. And this is a memorial to the shipyard that was here. There was a tremendous shipyard right here in South Portland during World War II, and more than 200 of these Liberty ships were built there. So inside that structure are exhibits, as you see on the right, that tell the history of that shipyard, and it's really quite fascinating. So while we're there, we'll have a box lunch on the grounds of Bug Light Park, and you'll have the chance to explore that exhibit as well. And again, I'm not sure if I said already, the tower will be open for us by my friend Jack Roberts from the Chamber of not Chamber of Commerce, the Rotary Club there. And then we drive up to Boothbay Harbor for our last stop of that day. And this is, I believe this was done in the past some years ago as part of this tour, but it's been a long time. We had to make some changes because of storm damage at another lighthouse. So we are going to get a short boat ride out from Boothbay Harbor to Burnt Island to see this lighthouse. It is owned by the state of Maine, the Division of Marine Resources, and they've done a tremendous job at this place. Some of you may know about Elaine Jones, who was kind of the driving force behind that for many years. But we will get inside the keeper's house and tower. You see the covered passageway there between the house and tower on the left there. There are exhibits, including those lenses you see there. So this is really going to be a treat. It's just a beautiful island. There's a short walk from the dock over to the lighthouse and house. And I know that people on the tour are really going to enjoy this. So I'm very, very happy we're able to include it on the tour. So actually one of the oldest lighthouse towers on the Maine coast. It dates to 1821, if I remember correctly. And then we're at the Rockland Harbor Hotel for the next 3 nights. And I've stayed here before. We were here on the 2021 tour we did here. And one of the things I remember most about this place is that it's right across the street from the ferry that goes from Rockland to Vinyl Haven Island, big island offshore. One morning I woke up very early and there was an incredible sunrise over the water looking past the ferry terminal, and I walked across the street and it was just breathtaking. So I can't promise anything, but hopefully we'll get a really nice sunrise or two while we're there. And then our first day in Rockland, we go to right down the street to the Maine Lighthouse Museum in Rockland. I'm sure a lot of you know the history of this place. It kind of dates back to the old what was called the Shore Village Museum in Rockland, that was run by the late Ken Black, a retired Coast Guard officer, who saved a lot of lighthouse lenses and other artifacts virtually off the trash heap. And he put together an exhibit in the Shore Village Museum, and it led eventually to the Maine Lighthouse Museum on the waterfront. This museum has the largest collection of lighthouse lenses, Fresnel lighthouse lenses in the country. They have every order of lens from a large second order lens down to sixth order. There is no first order lens, but there's every other order there, and a lot of other interesting things to look at. So I know you'll enjoy seeing this. It's really an incredible collection. And then on to Owl's Head Light, which is more than maybe a 20-minute drive from the museum. And it is a very scenic place, and it is also the headquarters, the home office of the American Lighthouse Foundation. And in the middle there is my good friend Bob Trapani Jr., who's the executive director of the American Lighthouse Foundation. That lens is not as big as it looks. That's perspective. That is a fourth order lens, but a very beautiful one. This is one of the 10 lighthouses in Maine that still has its Fresnel lens. You get to see that up close, and Bob will be there to greet us and show us around. There is an interpretive center or small museum in the house, and a beautiful gift shop run by Bob's wife, Anne. It's really a nice little gift shop. And here's our group in 2021 touring the lighthouse. You can see it's a short little lighthouse up on that high bluff, and there's not many stairs in the lighthouse, but there's a bunch of stairs going up to the lighthouse. So a little strenuous, and but if people don't want to do that, there's plenty to see in the house and the shop there. There's a little part of the museum on the right there. And here's one of the most famous stories of Owl's Head history. The keeper on the left there polishing the lens was Augustus or Gus Hammer. And he had a famous dog, and this was around the 1940-ish era. His dog, Spot, was a Springer Spaniel, and he supposedly would bark and almost as served as an extra fog signal. He would bark at passing ships and things like that. And famous story goes that one time in a blizzard, Spot was in the house and he started barking to be let out, and the keeper let him out, and he ran out to the rocks, and there was a blizzard going on, so the visibility was terrible. You couldn't see anything in the snow, but he was barking like crazy out into the storm. And later, the story is that the captain of the local mail boat, Matinicus mail boat, was passing by and couldn't see where he was going. And he said that the barking of the dog warned him away from the rocks. So that's why my friend Angelique Perro wrote this children's book, Lighthouse Dog to the Rescue. And that is a marker in memory of Spot there on the right. A lot of people think that's the grave of Spot, but it's not. We don't know where he was buried, but that's in memory of a very famous lighthouse dog. And then right near there, we're going to go to the Owl's Head Transportation Museum. This is a new addition to the tour, and it's an incredible place, and I'm very happy we're able to include it. I've been there twice, and it is one of the most beautiful collections of restored antique cars and planes and boats that you'll ever see. I'm not a big car person personally, or plane person, but I'm so impressed by these. They're really works of art, and I'm so impressed by the way they've preserved them there. They're really, really beautiful to look at. So nice addition to the tour. And then we're on to Marshall Point Light, another iconic lighthouse of Maine. In fact, some of you remember was the lighthouse scene in the movie Forrest Gump, where Forrest runs across the country, and that's where he ends his tour on the East Coast. Can't go any farther from there. It is a short lighthouse, but just such a pretty spot. This is another place that had a lot of damage in the recent storms in January. The road to the lighthouse was chewed up and is impassable, as far as I know. Up to this time, you can't go through there. And the walkway you see going out to the lighthouse here was also damaged and is closed off right now. So I'm told that's hopefully, almost definitely, all going to be fixed by the time we're there, so there shouldn't be any issue at that point. There is a museum in the beautiful Keeper's House. I think it's a gorgeous house. And there's a nice museum on local history and the lighthouse and so forth, and also a nice shop in there. You didn't get enough shopping in that day. And there's the view looking back at the house from the lighthouse there. And the lighthouse, I believe, will be open for us, but it's going to depend on a few things. But this is probably another lighthouse we're going to get into that is not normally open to the public. This is Dominic, who's the owner of Camden Harbor Cruises, and we're going to do an all-day cruise with them on, let's see, this is day 5, right? I think I'm up to date. I can't see at the top of my screen here. Yeah, we're up
Yeah,
to
day 5.
day 5, yeah. So you see their boat there, the Lively Lady, out in front of Curtis Island Lighthouse in Camden Harbor. Depending on the number of people we have on the tour, we'll all be on one boat or we might be on 2 boats. They'll be able to split us up into 2 boats if we have enough so that it would be too crowded on one boat. So in any case, it'll be comfortable, whether it's 1 or 2 boats, and we'll all do the same route. But it's so beautiful. I love Penobscot Bay, very distinctive granite islands with pine trees on them. It's just such a pretty area. And we're going to see a great bunch of lighthouses, 11 lighthouses on the cruise, including Rockland Breakwater on the upper left, very unique lighthouse at the end of the breakwater there. Indian Island and Rockport, which is privately owned. Curtis Island, for my money, right near the top of the prettiest lighthouses on the New England coast, Curtis Island there on the upper right. And you've got the Camden Hills rising up behind it when you're in the harbor there. I think it's one of the nicest harbors anywhere between the hills there and just the pretty lighthouse and everything else there. So the lower left is Grindle Point Light on Islesboro, the island offshore there. And lower center is Dice Head Light at the entrance of the Penobscot River in the town of Castine. The lower right is Pumpkin Island. It's another really, really pretty lighthouse, but one that's kind of off the beaten path for most people. It's privately owned. So we'll get a really nice view of it on the cruise. And then we've got Eagle Island Light, which once upon a time had a keeper's house. That's gone, but it still has the historic fog bell tower there. There aren't many of those left around. The top center is Deer Island Thoroughfare Light, otherwise known as Mark Island. Keeper's house there burned down many years ago. The upper right is Goose Rock's Light at the Fox Islands Thoroughfare, one of the few caisson spark plug type lights in Maine. Lower left is Brown's Head Light on Vinyl Haven, which watch for word of this, but should be opening in the not too distant future as a B&B, which is pretty exciting. Lower right again is Owl's Head Light, which is beautiful to visit on land, but I think even I think the best photographic views are actually from the water. So we'll get to see that from both land and water. The next day, which is the last day of the tour, other than the day when we all depart. But on day 6, there will be a 2-hour cruise in the Maine Maritime Museum in Bath, and we'll be on their vessel you see here. We're going to go up and down the Kennebec River, and this is a unique set of lighthouses. The river lights have a very different feel to them than the ocean lights. And of course, the water has a very different feel. It's pretty sheltered, and in most of the time, it's very calm and everything here. In the distance on the upper left, that's Doubling Point Light on the upper left, which is right across from the city of Bath. Looking in the distance, you can see the Bath Ironworks, those cranes there, which is the biggest employer in the state of Maine, and one of the General Dynamics runs it. It's one of the biggest defense contractors in the country. They build Navy ships there. On the upper right, you've got the Doubling Point Range Lights, also known as the Kennebec River Range Lights. They don't look much like lighthouses, but they are basically. They got the front range light, and in the shade in the background, you've got the rear range light. And as vessels are coming up in the channel and the river there, you'd line the one light above the other, and right above, directly above the other, and know that you're in the right channel there. Lower left is Squirrel Point Light, another really, really pretty station there. And the lower right is Perkins Island, The keeper's house is owned by the state of Maine and is not in great shape, as you can see, but the lighthouse tower maintained by the American Lighthouse Foundation there is in nice shape. We'll go out near the mouth of the Kennebec River there, and in the distance you'll see Pond Island Light and Seguin Island Light. Seguin being the highest light in Maine, over 200 feet above the water. Very interesting, dramatic place. Pond Island, just the lighthouse and solar panels are left there. But again, this will be a fairly distant view, and it'll probably depend on the sea conditions, how close we're able to get. But you will definitely see them, unless it's foggy. I shouldn't promise. There can be fog on the Maine coast, but anyway, so this is the Maine Maritime Museum. When we get back, you will have time in the museum. All kinds of exhibits on shipbuilding in Maine. There's a lot of beautiful maritime art. There are lots of beautiful ship models and another nice shop. If you haven't done enough shopping on the tour already, there's one of the nicer shops we'll see all week in the museum there. And to me, one of the centerpieces of that museum is this exhibit, which is a replica of the lantern from the east light of at Cape Elizabeth, the two lights there. And inside there is the old second order Fresnel lens from the east light at Cape Elizabeth, which was put on display here a few years ago. And they did a great job at this exhibit. There's like a video that plays behind it. It's like a time-lapse video. It was taken from the top of the east light, and it shows you the changing sky and the seas, the tide going in and out, and so forth. And there's all kinds of exhibits about lighthouses in this room with this exhibit. So if you don't see the rest of the museum, you'll at least want to look at this. It's really worth seeing. And then our last lighthouse of the tour is Pemaquid Point. We'll save one of the best for last. Another one of the iconic lighthouses of the Maine coast. I would put this in the top 5 most iconic lighthouses and probably one of the top 5 most visited lighthouses in the state of Maine. Pemaquid Point in the town of Bristol, at the end of a long peninsula there. And the grounds are owned by the town of Bristol. The lighthouse is maintained by a chapter of the American Lighthouse Foundation. There's been a lot of good restoration work done on it in the last 10 or 15 years. This tower will be open for us. There is a 4th order Fresnel lens here. Here's that picture I just showed I took it at sunrise a few years ago. This picture is one of the kind of iconic views of this lighthouse. A lot of people do this. You walk down the rocks there and look for that particular tide pool, and you get that reflection of all the buildings in it. Just be careful if you walk down the rocks there. The building in front of the lighthouse in this picture with the red brick and then the tower sticking up above it, that is the historic bell tower there. That was largely wrecked in those storms in mid-January. So at this point, it's only partly standing, but they are planning to restore it. Not sure exactly when that'll be happening, but probably by the time we get there. And here's the 4th order Fresnel lens at Pemaquid Point Light. And the museum, known as the Fisherman's Museum, inside the keeper's house. And you see another 4th order lens on display inside the museum and exhibits on the local fishing industry and so forth. And then we return to Portland for the farewell dinner that evening, back to the Embassy Suites. And then the next morning, people will go their own way. You can head home or spend some more time in the Portland area. There's certainly a lot to see around there. And I'm actually gonna go to the website right now because I want to make sure people know how to find these things. I'm just going to give you a really quick tour of the website. Looking at my watch, more time passed than I thought, but I guess that always happens. But so here's the website. This is the front page of the website. And I just want to mention they've got these menus going across the top. And I want to mention that if you scroll down here, got events, and of course the event we're doing right now is right here. That'll be replaced by something else first. The website was redone just a couple of months ago. So for people who don't know, check it out. And the current episode of the podcast is posted right here. You can play it right here. And then Lighthouse News of the Week is posted every Friday. So that's interesting to check out. And if you go up top under travel, click on USLHS tours. And here is the list of tours for this year. And the Southern Maine and New Hampshire tour is towards the bottom. You can see the incredible international tours that are coming up. Canary Islands, that's next year. France, South by Southwest, also next year. But you've got Denmark and Germany this year. There's just a waiting list. I think I mistakenly said earlier there are 3 international tours this year, actually. 2 of those are next year. But and you've got Rhode Island and Connecticut, Northern California. So there's still room in most of these tours. So check that out. And there's more detail about every tour as well. So if you click on learn more, there's the complete itinerary. There it is. And more information about the tour we're talking about today. So let me come out of screen sharing. And thank you all for bearing with me. And at this point, first, before we go to Q&A, I don't know if Tina, if you have anything you wanna add before we go to some Q&A.
No, I just want to comment that there were a few people that joined in pretty late. So just a reminder that this meeting has been recorded. And Jeremy, maybe you can give some more info on where they can locate that.
Absolutely, yeah. It will be posted, and I always try to get them posted by sometime on Monday on the USLHS YouTube channel. So let me go back. Let me share my screen again for a moment here and go back to the website. If you're on the front page of the website and go down to the bottom of the page, down here, there's
A
these,
little fuzzy again, Jeremy. Oh,
is
now
it,
it's cleared up. It must
I
just
don't
be
know what
because
that's
of
all
the
about.
delay.
I don't
Yeah.
know why that's happening. I've never
Okay.
seen that before. But anyway, got these social media links, and the right one here is YouTube. So you click on that and go right to the YouTube channel. And the podcast episodes are posted on there. It's another way if you want to listen to them. But there's all the past Zoom events are on there and various other videos. So definitely check that out, and please subscribe to it. We really strongly encourage you to do that. So this will be posted there by sometime tomorrow. You can also go right to YouTube and just do a search for USLHS, and you'll find it as well. All right. So at this point, we can open up to questions. I don't know if there's any questions in the chat. I'm going to look for them, but um, also, if people would like to verbally ask a question, what you need to do is go to reactions on your Zoom controls down the bottom. And when you click reactions, you'll see raise hand. You can click on raise hand, and I will see if you have your hand raised, and I will call on you. You can unmute yourself if you want to ask a question that way. But let me see if I used to work near the Owl's Head Lighthouse years ago. Let me see here. I don't know if there's any questions. I'm seeing all the chat about the picture being fuzzy. Why did the Lighthouse Depot in Wells close? Well, that's going back quite a few years now. I'd say, is it at least 10 years, maybe between 10 and 15 at this point when it closed. But what happened was, I'm sure a lot of you know, Tim Harrison and Kathy Finnegan started that store, famous store, world's largest lighthouse gift store. They had another business partner on that. I believe they sold their interest and then, or most of their interest. But basically, the collectibles business kind of, as the bottoms kind of fallen out of that. So it's not what it was. The Harbor Lights Company, that was a big part of that business that made the lighthouse replicas, they went, well, that actually merged with Lighthouse Depot, but then Harbor Lights went out of business. And then people just weren't buying that kind of stuff anymore. So sadly, it went out of business. Um, that's about all I can say about that. But anyway, I know a lot of people miss that. That old beautiful farmhouse it was in is gone now too. There's a new building there. But anyway, uh, I'll invite anybody else who might want to say anything at this point. For instance, Bob Trapani, no requirement, but if you want anything about how you'll be joining in parts of this tour, including, of course, at Owl's Head, I want to invite you to speak if you'd like to, Bob.
Sure, Jeremy. Hey, welcome everybody. I'm glad to be a part of the call today. I'll tell you, I always look forward to the United States Lighthouse Society tours. Great group of people. always interesting talking to people from all over the country and why do they do what they do and why are the tours such a great way to not only see lighthouses but to meet other people of similar interest. But yeah, I mean, you come to Maine, as you can imagine, there's so many different senses of place in Maine. Southern Maine is different from mid-coast, and mid-coast is different from down east. And I know you're not going down east on this one, but there is just such beauty to see that it's more than a lighthouse tour. It is truly the experience of the Maine coast, and at a time of year which it's at, it's some of its most beautiful. So I'll look forward to seeing as many of you that can join us. That will be a real fun time.
Thank you, Bob, and thank you for all you all always do when we bring the tours there. Those of you who do the tour, if you've done a past Maine tour, you know that Bob really helps out a lot, both at Owl's Head Light and some of the other stops. He'll meet us and help. He'll be on some of the cruises, maybe help a little bit with some of the narration and so forth. So Bob is a really important part of these tours.
But
And
you know, Jeremy, we talk about how important the keepers were and how their stories, and I don't think much has changed in lighthouses. It's still really about all the people, and it's just when you can get people together with like-minded interests, it just makes everything so much more fun. So
that's absolutely right. Yeah, I'm glad you said that. It is all about the people. It's a historically and the present day, it's about the people who do these tours and the people who work for lighthouse preservation. It really is about the people. And on that subject, I just want to mention something that should be mentioned today. I think a lot of you already have seen the news that one of our dear members of our U.S. Lighthouse Society family, Marie Vincent, just passed away a couple of days ago. We're really sad to see that. She was maybe best known to a lot of people for being the person who did a lot of the editing and layout and so forth of the Keeper's Log, the U.S. Lighthouse Society magazine. But she was a longtime volunteer, both for the society in Washington, but before that, the Chesapeake chapter down in the Chesapeake region as well. She was a really important part of that. So we're very sorry that Marie passed away after a long battle with cancer the other day. Margie, I know that you have your hand raised, and I did want to invite you to speak. So the floor is yours.
Thank you, Jeremy. Great presentation. And I
Thank you.
really wish I was going on this tour because I've been to a lot of these lighthouses, but not inside. This is very exciting for everybody to be able to get inside.
That
I
is,
want to also pass on that the other tours for 2024 are filling up fast. In fact, the only ones that we have a couple openings for Denmark, Germany. Other than that, it's Northern California and this tour that have the openings. The rest of them are full.
oh, really? Rhode Island and Connecticut is full now?
That is due to the fact of the limitations of the boats that we've got. They can
Okay.
only take so many people. So
Mm-hmm.
we had to limit how many people we could take.
Great.
Anyway, I just wanted everybody to know that that is the case. And the 2025 tours are listed, but not in detail, not in as much detail as the 2024s because they're not developed yet. But they are listed on the site, and you can take a look at what we're planning on presenting for 2025.
Mm-hmm. Just a little tip. We are working on Tina and I'll be working on a Cape Cod tour for next year, so that'll be announced soon as well. But anyway,
right. So for the
yeah.
2025 season, right now, and then that's what's on the website, is that tour, which I know is going to be a great tour. Is also Australia and France by South by Southwest, which you mentioned earlier. Lake Superior North, which is still in development stage. Massachusetts and Cape Cod, Jeremy just talked about, and Canary Island. So lots of things already in the works for 2025.
Yeah, we haven't announced the dates yet for the Cape Cod tour, but that'll be happening soon. And that's going to be a great one for sure. And Tina, as we talked about at the beginning,
I know very well.
I was going to say exactly what I was going to say. And I know it well too, but Tina knows Cape Cod really, really well. So that'll be an excellent tour. But I want to mention, I think a lot of you already know this, but Margie and her husband Jerry uh, do a lot to manage the whole tour program out of Washington, where the headquarters, of course, of the U.S. Lighthouse Society is. And I was lucky enough to do the Ireland tour, which is hard to believe it's almost 2 years ago now. It'll be 2 years in July. That was a fantastic tour. The Ultimate Ireland tour is like 23 days, and Jerry and Margie ran that, and it was fantastic. But they do a tremendous job, do so much work on behalf of the society. So thank you for everything you do, Margie, and for being here today. So I'm looking, Sue, do we, no, that's still the same question. I was looking see if there was any more questions in the chat. I don't think
I
there
just want to
are.
add, I really
Mhm.
am looking forward to this Maine tour. I think the coast in Maine is beautiful, and everything that we're going to do and see. This is the first meeting that we're having on this tour. It's the plans were really just firmed up over the last few weeks. So I think we're going to have a lot of feedback and people signing up pretty quick. There are some people already registered to attend. So if anyone's considering it, I, consider it soon. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah, yeah, they can fill up fast.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be great. And as Margie said, there's a lot of important, points, sort of selling points, I guess you might say, for these tours. And one of them is that you get inside a lot of lighthouses that you don't normally get into. And the U.S. Lighthouse Society, the name has some cachet, is that the word to use? That helps get us into, and of course I've been in the lighthouse biz for like 40 years, and that helps with some of these Maine lighthouses as well. I know these people. So that's one of the advantages. And you see more than the lighthouses. You see a lot of things related to the local culture, whether it's in Maine or in Europe or wherever it is. You get local cuisine, you get to just see a lot more than lighthouses, the other museums and things too. But the main focus is lighthouses, of course. And I mean both Maine and with an E and without an E there on the end. So anyway, I don't know if there's any more questions. Let's see. I don't see anything in the chat or any hands raised or anything like that. So I guess we can kind of wind things down at this point. Again, this will be posted on YouTube tomorrow. And I'll tell you that we don't have another event scheduled on Zoom right now, but tentative, I'm looking through my schedule book here. Tentatively, we're going to be doing, you might want to mark your calendars. I'm not sure this is 100% sure, but April 13th, Saturday, April 13th, a Zoom event with the photographer Pete Lero, who's just an amazing photographer and does a lot of night lighthouse photography. Some of you may remember we did one with Dave Zapatka, who's also done a lot of great lighthouse night photography. But we're doing one with Pete, talking about his lighthouse photography, also nature photography and other things. So that's going to be a really good one. So at this point, I think we can wind things down for today. I thank you all once again for being with us. Thank you, Tina. Again, great
Yeah.
to be working with you on this tour. It's a lot of fun, and it's going to be a great tour. And thank you, Margie.
Would I
Thank
get
you.
to call you
Yeah.
Uncle Jeremy? No.
It feels weird to me for you to
I
call me
know.
that.
Yeah.
So you
Well,
don't have to start.
that's because your wife and my sister are many years apart in age. So you and I are closer in age than they are. But
Right.
I might just to joke with you. Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds really, really weird to me.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can call me that if you want, but
Yeah.
I won't get used to it. But thank you again. Thank you,
Thank you,
Tina. Thank
everyone.
you, Margie. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody. And I'll be seeing you all this upcoming season, one way or another, whether it's on Zoom or at lighthouses. And thank you so much, everybody, and keep a good light.
Thanks.
Great, cheerio.